My name is Gerald, and this is my story. I grew up in this area, and I was a multi-sport athlete, straight A student. We won the state football championship my senior year, and I wanted to get as far away from here as I could to go to college, and so I ended up going to college out on the East Coast, where I also played football for a couple years. After an injury, after being really drunk on a beach, imagine that, I took up theater and film, and I studied those trades my last 2 years in college. Maybe the first time that I ever thought I may be drinking too much was when I had a beer with me in the shower before a party. And that was kind of a signifier. I graduated from college, so I went to LA for a year. Didn't really enjoy it that much. A year after I moved to LA, I moved back to the Midwest because I missed the Midwest. I got into the advertising industry, which is known by many to be quite a liquid industry. You take clients out for lunch and drink. You take clients out for happy hour and drink, or you go out with your workmates and drink at happy hour. You drink to be creative and come up with great ideas. I was drinking probably 4 days a week, but really drinking hard 4 days a week. The other 3 I was recovering. Didn't affect my job again to any certain extent where it, caused any waves or anything at the office. In fact, I was doing my best work in my career. So there we have a functioning alcoholic making, loads of money, but drinking at home alone 3 or 4 nights a week and blacking out. I went to a funeral of a friend of mine who OD'd on OxyContin and cocaine. At that funeral, I met my now girlfriend and mother of my child, my 6-year-old now daughter. Moved from Chicago back home. Here I was back in Wausau, opening a creative business in a conservative town during the worst recession ever with no clients. But I thought for some reason that the Wausau area would be a good place to come because I could probably drink less. And then in June of 2011, I went out to a local pub for 2 beers, and I was going to mow the lawn when I got home. It was a beautiful summer evening like this. 6 beers, 8 mixed drinks, 7 shots later. I got out of a cab somewhere in the city and entered a complete stranger's home. The next thing I remember is walking down the street, beautiful summer evening, and suddenly I was flanked by 2 very friendly police officers who asked me if I had entered that home back there, to which I replied, I believe, maybe. And after not being able to answer questions such as, what's your name, where do you live, do you have a cell phone, I was in the back of the police car, taking me to the healthcare center, which is approximately 2.5 blocks from my house. Luckily, I remembered where my cell phone was. It was in my front right pocket, as it had been for a decade. And I remembered my girlfriend's name, found her number in the phone. Went inside, they dropped me off. She wasn't very happy to see me. And 2 days later, I walked into my family's home, which is supposed to be a family reunion, the first one in over a decade, and instead it was an intervention. I remember walking into what was the intervention and knowing it was time. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was ready. And they drove me over to a treatment center in Minnesota 3 hours later, and I haven't had a drink since. When I left Hazelden after 28 days, it really felt like I had a degree in addiction. One of the things that they really harped on there was that it's a progressive disease. And I feel, whether I'm sitting here with you talking about it now, whether I'm with my 6-year-old daughter, relishing, a great moment that I'm having with her, or I'm, in a meeting, I just have to continue to remember that, while I'm sitting here, my disease is out in the parking lot doing push-ups. It's getting stronger and stronger and stronger as I get older. When a lot of people begin recovery or are in treatment or realize they have a problem. The number one thing on their mind is, I'm not going to have any fun anymore. Well, what I would say to them is, were you really having fun? Was it really fun for me to wake up every morning and make sure there wasn't blood on my bumper? You're not having fun. You aren't, period. And no matter how long you try to tell yourself that, you're not. There is an immense amount of freedom that I have experienced these last 3+ years that I never would have imagined I could have. The freedom to be able to think with a clear head, the freedom to be able to connect with my family and friends on a more substantial, meaningful level. This side's a lot more fun. It's a lot more fun. And, I run a business. We have offices in 2 cities. I have a 6-year-old daughter who I am able to enjoy these special years. I get to coach, youth sports teams. These are things. Those 3 things right there are things I never thought I would do. Never thought I would do, and I have the freedom to do those now. Do those types of things.
The room was packed Tuesday night at the City Council. If the Council decided to support the mayor vetoing the ordinance, it would have been dropped and the Council would have had to put it together again no earlier than 30 days. But that did not happen Tuesday night, and the ordinance will stand.
We tend to do or believe what we think other people are doing or believing. But unfortunately, we're usually wrong. We overperceive risky behaviors and we underperceive protective behaviors.
I am a mother that did not know the power of prescription painkillers had become a ruling factor in my child's life. I am a mother that helplessly watched the successes and the failures and all the positive things in my child's life unraveled before me, not knowing why and not knowing what I could do about it. Now, I will not look back. I will not look back and I will not ask why my child. Nor will I fear that I am too small or I am not strong enough to fight to make a difference for you children, you young children, my children.
Welcome back. Parents, do you have extra medications that you don't need to use anymore? Well, they shouldn't be lying around the house for young ones or any aged kids to grab. Good news is there's a place to bring them.
Kush.
Pot,
Grass.
Hash.
weed,
reefer,
Mary Jane.
Dope.
no matter what it's called, it can still hurt us.
Join us in the conversation. Visit takebackyouth.org.
The key is really paying attention to the 5 conditions for collective impact, and I think we need to be mindful of those. I think we need to also be very thoughtful and introspective on them and very honest. I think any coalition is probably doing at least some of those things or all of those things in part, but are we doing them as effectively as we should, and are we really having an impact?
We've distributed at least 3,000 bags of materials, which you saw the red bags probably out front. on going door to door within our community. It includes stuff like how to identify drug activity and how to report it, how to identify if somebody's using and how to intervene, how to get involved with the AOD partnership, and a variety of other resources.
We can't enforce our way out of this. It's going to require a much more complex strategy, and that's one thing that I think this report really does, is looks at there's not a one-size-fits-all answer. It's going to require multiple efforts in multiple ways.
And the question is, why is this important? Why it's important is because addiction affects the entire community in so many ways. Why it's important is because recovery affects the community in so many ways, in such a powerful way.
New at 6 tonight, statistics show that millions of Americans need treatment for substance abuse problems every year, and one local man's personal path from abuse to recovery shows that while it isn't always easy, it can be done.
I've been with Marathon County for 3 years now, and in the 3 years that I've been here, there has been an uptick in alcohol and drug abuse concerns with parents.
Tomorrow night, we are taking you inside the fight against heroin. It's a drug that's deadly grip has been felt by many in central Wisconsin. Experts say this is the worst they've seen in the heroin epidemic, and they say it will most likely continue until something is done.
If we can stop them before they start or get people the help that they need when they're ready to quit, I think that we're going to make bigger impacts.
Tomorrow night on Newsline 9 at 10, we take a closer look at a central Wisconsin community's fight against heroin.
Some of the new trends and threats that are coming out of the states that have passed, and that's kind of what we're focusing on here for this final part, is the concentrates, the increased use of dabbing and vaping, the potency of smoked marijuana, and the rise of edibles.
I'm Angel Fleming, and this is my story. Well, my mom had me on February 5th, and she was 15, and she dropped out of high school to take care of me, but she ended up going to a group home. I was sent to a foster home until she turned 18. They fought over me. You know, the foster parents wanted to keep me, and my mom's like, no, I want my child back. Like, that's my kid. We moved to Eagle River with my stepdad, father figure, for 12 years she was married to. He was a young guy too, only a couple years older, and he was working at this pizza place. She was working at Country Kitchen, going back to school to get her GED, because remember, she dropped out. Well, she was 21 when she got it, by that time, and it was a long struggle for her. We moved all the time. I was always a new kid in school. I was held back. I think that a lot of it has to do with that, with my self-esteem. I stopped believing in myself right there in that kind of thing as I reminisce. I was 7 years old or 8 years old. They would sleep all day. I'm kidding not. And when Destiny was crying, my dad was screaming at her in the crib, and she was only 1. So I had to look after her and a hyper ADHD brother. Oh my gosh. Drove me nuts, and he got abused more than us, and he's the most successful out of all of us so far. And he had it worse than us. He got beat like you wouldn't believe, with belts. My dad would pour Tabasco sauce down his throat. He'd be a smart aleck, and my brother would get, I like that. And my dad would, boom, like he'd pull over on the side of the road. He just started hitting us, is really what stuck out the most was the beatings, the belts. My little brother got pulled aside. He got hit with the belt buckle, and he had this big scratch. And my dad said, "You better say it's a cat," even though we didn't have a cat. He made us hug for like an hour, you know, and after he beat us, because we were playing with, he accused us of playing with car batteries, and we were picking raspberries. No one believed me, and they believed my dad. My dad was so fired up. It affects me today because I'm so traumatized. I lost contact with my dad for many years. Well, she became so bad at drinking that we lost our electricity, our running water. So then I started rolling my mom, which means stealing money from your mom. I don't feel good about that now, but I had to do what I had to do. She wasn't providing. I got my tattoos removed that were gang related in Rylander. I was jumped so many times, so when I walk the streets to this day, I won't let anyone walk behind me. Yeah, I joined that when I was 13 because I didn't have family and I had nothing. So I'd always say, like, I will never date anybody that would be an addict. And oh my gosh, I should have known. Pain pills, pot, and I drank a bottle of rum for the first time. I stole that from my mom. That was a return move. And I always said, I will never be an addict. Who you hang out with is who you become. Who you fall in love with, it don't matter. Family, friends, whatever. It's all about environment. I learned that the hard way. I had to go back to insanity over and over. And then you finally get it that it's not ever gonna work, so let's stop doing that. Because to me, I believed in that. You psychologically tell someone over and over, they start believing in that, and I believed in it in the longest time until I started the Journey program, and Nicole said, no, you might be mad at the world because you're parents, and they tell you you're just like your parents, but that was your choice. You have a choice to do your life good, and you have a choice to make your life bad. That's up to you. I didn't believe that. So little by little, I started playing, and I started feeling good. I started building the self-confidence, and every day I feel that drive to the success. It's almost there. I know it, and I will leave a legacy behind.
My name is Christine Kennedy, and this is my story. My mom had chronic pain her whole life, so she always had lots of meds to cope with that, narcotics mostly. So that was the first time that I ever took anything, was from her offering it to me. She would just give me like a little baggie of 10, and then I could take them when I wanted. The addiction, I mean, it started slowly in the beginning when I was using the Vicodin that my mom gave me. You know, I would just kind of dabble here and there because it allowed me to put on that fake face. I'm a nurse. I was nominated for Nurse of Excellence, you know, respected by my peers, certified in my field of OB. When I went into recovery, people were very surprised to hear of it. They said they just didn't expect it from me. A lot of people know me in the community as a mom. You know, I helped teach Vacation Bible School and Sunday School, and helped, you know, at all my kids' schools when they were younger. The first time I diverted at work, it wasn't actually Vicodin, it was Nubane. That's what we give moms in labor for pain. So I thought, well, I have this, my patient only got so much, and then there's leftover, they just waste it, and it just totally spiraled out of control. Once you do it once, and I got away with it, it was easy to do again, and my addiction grew and grew. I walked into work that morning, and my supervisor and human resources met me off the elevator and asked me to come into the office. I already knew where this was going. I knew I really needed help, and I wanted to report myself, but I just couldn't do it because I was afraid of what would happen, and I was afraid of what it would be like to not use. And I just broke down and cried and said, please help me, I don't know what to do. They put me in their confidential monitoring program, and it's a 5-year program where you have to be compliant and report to them and do your drug screens and do your counseling. And I was so grateful that day that someone finally reached down and pulled me out of the hole, because I'm not sure what would have happened if they didn't. I graduated from the monitoring program. You know, I felt really proud, and I learned a lot from my recovery, and was happy to be on the recovery side. I never even thought about relapse, even though they have you do relapse prevention plan to make sure you're taking care of yourself, because I just thought, there's no way I'm going to relapse. And looking back, how my support was lacking, and I wasn't, you know, practicing every day my self-care. But I relapsed, and I diverted at work again. Same drug of choice. It was 3 months that I had been using, around there. When I came into work in the morning, you know, I met my boss and the director of nursing, and they said, can we have a talk? And again, I knew exactly where this was going. I was cooperative, and I did the urine drug screen. I owned my relapse as it was, and I was fired, and I lost my job. Talk about humbling. I understand what it's like to be on food stamps and Badger Care and not able to provide for your family. I self-reported to the board again. They accepted me, and I have restrictions for working. I cannot have any access to controlled substances, and I have to have supervision. I can never be the only nurse on the unit. I recently just found a job. Thankfully, someone believes in me and my recovery, and she was happy to have me, so I'm working as a nurse again. I have changed so much. The most important part of staying in recovery and of my relapse prevention plan is my trust in God. I feel like He called me back. I've made new friends in recovery. If I was talking to someone on their first day of recovery where they're trying to escape that spiraling and that black hole of addiction, I would tell them that there's hope. There's hope to recover. There's hope for a different life without using, and I would say don't give up yet.
I'm Pat Snyder, and this is my story. I grew up in a household where my father drank a lot and was an alcoholic. He was an alcoholic that when he got too much, he would get angry and sometimes even physical. And I always vowed that I was never going to be like him. I didn't have a drink until I was 18, and that was when I went to college. Then you started what I would call the selling process to yourself. Oh, this is just everyone drinks, and it's good to have a good time, and I don't have a problem because I can control it. You get drunk and you have a hangover, and man, I don't want to do that again, but then you sell yourself, well, I can handle it the next time. As I look back in the past, I realize that alcohol isn't bad, it's the abuse of alcohol that's bad. And a lot of times I couldn't go out and have just a beer or two. It'd have to be 5, 6, 7 to get that buzz. That was important to have. But I sold myself thinking, well, everyone's kind of doing that, because I associated with a lot of people that were doing the same thing I was doing. I married my wife in 1980, and then later kids were born in 85 and 87, and she brought some concerns up, issuing like, you got to call me to let me know you're going to do this and things. And that continued on, and that escalated. I also had the folks that were concerned about me, besides my wife, some of my brothers, some close friends that said, you really should look into this. I think you have a drinking problem. And again, I was thinking more of myself. It was about me. I look back now and surprised she tolerated it as long as she did. Sometimes I find out my wife would rush him to bed a little earlier, knowing I'd be home late. They were afraid to have friends over on the weekends for sleepovers because if I stayed out on a Friday night or Saturday, what was I going to come home like? And, you know, that really hurt that I affected their childhood this way. There's dates you remember, you know, the birth of your kids, your wedding day, things like that. July 29, 2003, I'll never forget that day because that's the day that I went out motorcycle riding with friends. We started drinking, and the next thing I know, I wake up the next morning in the hospital, broken arm, broken leg, hurting like heck, not knowing what in the heck happened. Where I was, I had to find out when I got called from a newspaper reporter telling me everything I did. I was in the hospital for 10 days, and in those 10 days, the fog cleared a bit, and I just said to God, God, this is something I can't handle. Ask for His mercy for the past, and look for His guidance in the present and providence in the future. And apologize to my wife and family, my friends. But what was amazing is all the friends you thought that were your friends that you drank with, not one came to the hospital. And all the people that I thought were disappointed in me, didn't like me because I drank a lot, they all came. Once I finally gave it over to God and took that responsibility that I just can't drink, it's like a huge weight was lifted off because I know that I'm never going to face that problem again. And what's amazing is now you see things more clear-headed. I have a more optimistic outlook. I don't have to worry, you know, if the lights come on behind me, it's going to be a tail light out or I'm speeding. And all I really ever have to do is just look at my arm, see the scar, and realize that's what it would escalate to again, and I don't want to go back to that. Once you realize and you move forward and you stop drinking, you stop using, you have to bury the past with the past. You know, get the forgiveness from the people that you might have hurt. And it's going to take a little time to get their trust back, but you'll get it. I hope people don't have to hit that rock bottom, but unfortunately is a disease that sometimes that's what it takes. If I wouldn't have gotten in an accident and busted myself up and been in the hospital 10 days, just maybe received an OWI, which is really a misdemeanor in some cases here in Wisconsin, that I probably would have sold myself like, I just bad luck. If I could tell people, and if they get to that point where they're feeling totally lost, is to try to move a level above the alcohol and realize when you kind of get above the fog, I mean, it's clear and sunshine. And it's being down in that fog that keeps you so depressed, and you got to get above that. Someone that sees me, see that is having problems and maybe hitting that rock bottom, they can look and say, you know, he did it. I can do it as well.